Welcome to the CX Pod, where we aim to expand people's perception of customer experience management. We know that customer experience goes hand in hand with employee experience, and we believe that a broader and more holistic view might even replace terms like CX and EX with people experience or human experience.
Hello and good day and welcome back to the CX Pod. This is Merete or Merete or Miriam if you want. I don't know how many different ways my name has been pronounced during the seasons of the podcast, but hello, Joanna, your name is a bit easier. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Although sometimes if we're talking in Norwegian, I might be Johanna eller Joanna. Yeah, so Joanna can also be pronounced differently. No, I'm great. Actually, I've got some great news.
Yeah.
Earlier on the podcast, I've talked a lot about a customer journey that I had that was a bit horrendous. If you remember my car customer journey.
Yes, we remember your car history.
The one where I sort of got kicked out of the community because I was apparently not an equal owner to the app functions.
No, you're a woman. Why would you be?
I own half of the car. But anyway, they've made the change. Finally. They have actually made the change, and I have equal rights on the app on
your car now.
But nobody ever reached out to me. So that's like the other interesting part.
Oh, I did found out.
No, I got a mail, but I made quite a bit of hoo-ha about this.
You did.
Into the customer experience team, and nobody ever reached out to me. But anyway, they've listened, they've made a change.
They've tagged you now as the witch from Norway.
Yeah, I think so.
So, Miriam, welcome.
Thank you.
To our little internal podcast here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have you heard the story about Joanna buying a new car with her husband and then she wasn't entitled to the full sort of access?
No, I'm afraid I missed that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you probably should repeat the story sometimes, Joanna, but maybe not today. But we are here. Miriam, you are our guest. I know you from before. We were actually introduced by my ex-wife, I just remembered, which is a little sort of funny because we're not really in the same line of work. We're a little bit more in the same line of work now. We got divorced and then we started working on the same things. But we met quite a few years ago. I think maybe it's 10 years ago now.
Yeah, I think so.
I was in Telia. You were in Tieto. And that's now become
Every,
yeah. But you're not there anymore. So we're going to let you talk a little bit more about yourself. But I do know that Joanna has done some research because she's very good at research. So Joanna, how did we stumble across Miriam to be our guests on the pod today? Do you want to emphasize?
Yeah, well, of course, we wanted you, Miriam, to be a guest on our podcast. And we haven't known each other 10 years, but we've known each other a few years. And I know that you, of course, you work in Allente, which is Allente Nordic, which is a TV, or am I going to say this wrong now? A TV sort of operator or provider.
That's right.
Yeah, to the Nordic regions, and you're head of analytics. And I know that as a person, I know that you come from a background in consulting, as Merete mentioned in the introduction. But of course, now you are a data analytics, research, leadership person, a key person at Allente. And just a couple of months ago, I believe you also spoke at the Qualtrics conference, where you was also talking about how we can balance AI innovations with essential human interactions. So we've had a few conversations. I am so thrilled that you want to join us today as our guest on this podcast. And we can't wait to dive into the questions, especially when it gets to about AI. I'm sure we
I'm
just thinking about that.
For the last 10 years, all you've done is just straight on. It's a straight line from starting off as a networking coffee to participating in the podcast. It's like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
We've just sort of, gone along and here we are. Excited to have you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing really well, actually. Excited to be here.
In addition to what Joanna said and what I said, what is your take on sort of like where you are? What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis then? What does it imply that you are the head of analytics at Allente? How does that look?
Yeah, I had the analytics team. So we're a relatively small team. a few analysts and research. So we have a responsibility for both customer insights and analytics. So where I'm coming from, I've been working with customer insight for the last 15 years. And then I kind of slided into analytics from there when the previous sort of head of analytics left, and I was asked to take over the analytics team. But I've been working really close with the analytics team throughout all the years.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, what a clever combination of sort of disciplines.
Yeah, exactly.
That must be so
I've been
valuable.
working with analysis and data all the years I've been in CX. And yeah, I think that's critical when you work in CX. You have to be data driven. So this is just, for me, a natural expansion of that.
So how did you end up in CX? Like, what sort of caught your attention that made you go into this?
Yeah, I have. I've been working with sort of driving change in organization now. Actually, I counted to prepare for this, doing some notes actually for 27 years now. And I spent the first 15 years in banks and some insurance at the end, but usually banks, where it has been a lot of focus on efficiency, driving efficiency, using technology, and being that kind of middleman between the business side of things and the operational part and the technology. So I spent a lot of time on, for example, automation, optimizing processes end to end, and I worked on a lot of different things. And I think it was how I got into CX was a bit random. We have been working for a long time on efficiency, working on very internal KPI. But what we thought was going to be very important for customers, for example, getting the handling time for loan applications significantly reduced. I think back then we're trying to get it down from 14 days to 24 hours, which was a really big ambition, very long project. We managed to do that. But at some point, we understood that even working with some of these ambitious goals and KPIs for several years, there was something kind of lacking on the customer side. And we didn't really check how it was on the customer side before this. So I got quite an open project to look into, hey, what's going on? What's going on the customer side? Why are they complaining? What is it? And I just got a really sort of open challenge. And this was kind of my religious awakening, I would say, to customer experience, because I thought that I had been working on the right things for so long. And then when I started digging into this from sort of an outside in perspective, I realized that the actual customer journey was something totally different than what we had thought when we were inside the office, standing there with our sticky notes and putting on paper and PowerPoint how it was supposed to look like. Reality was very, very different. And I also realized we're not measuring the right things. We don't have the right KPIs. This is not what the customers think. You know, I can take this example, just like when we wanted to measure, for example, the handling time for loans, we started measuring, you know, when we had all the papers from the clients, you know, and we had that into our case handling system and everything was scanned and sent to the right department. And this was very complex processes. So it might change department, you know, 6-7 times before you got to the end of it. But what we didn't realize that the customers, they started counting a lot earlier. When they had filled out a loan application online, that's when they started counting. And we realized that we hadn't even looked at that part of the process. So it was a really, really exciting project. I didn't even know how to approach this. We had to Google everything, you know, figure out, never heard about the customer journey, didn't know how to measure anything. So that was really cool. But we got quite a lot of time and we set really high ambitions. And it really ruffled some feathers in the organization, especially in management, because we had to make some really, really big changes. But I was very fortunate back then that they were willing to listen. And after that, we got a lot more customer focus in general. So that changed a lot. And for me, it was like there was no going back after that. Because I realized this is the only way to do it. Like what we've been doing up to this point is just wrong.
Yeah, such an amazing story.
We have that recorded now.
Yeah.
We're going to use this.
And we actually got some really amazing results. I think that was one of your questions to prepare, actually. If there was a project that I can still remember that I'm really proud of, and I still, after 15 years, that's still the one sort of in my heart, because it was just such a meaningful project for me personally, and such an awakening to what really matters and really going into the right things. And we got great results from it. one of the KPIs I think we had was to activate new customers. I think we only had like a 50% activation rate. And after the first phase, we managed to get it up to 80. And I think we got it, much higher eventually when we got everything implemented. But it was really good measurable results.
Yeah, it's such a handfast example, your experience and learning by doing. And again, I think we talked on a recent podcast as well about what was the most memorable experience. And what I hear is this, or the proudest experience, what I hear is this is also one of the most memorable and impactful experiences, because you've seen the power that that approach had for change, and probably for very many other people that it touched as well during the process, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it brought on a lot of change for the organization. And we did actually a project, as a part of the project, we realized how amazing just the customer journey mapping was as a tool, and just like bringing that customer awareness of just even without the customer, just putting yourself in the customer's shoes, what that does for the organization. So we actually, we took most of the organization through these exercises just for everybody to map out their journeys and look at things from a customer perspective. And it just makes you see things.
Leading question for me then: what happened to the employees during this process and their understanding and engagement for the customer?
Well, as I said, for management, it was pretty hard in the beginning. It was hard data to take in. It wasn't really hard feedback. Some of them felt a bit offended.
Yeah.
And almost didn't believe it. But I also then learned how powerful it is when you have that I'm not the one saying this. This is customers' statement. This is exactly what they wrote. This is what we did this like mystery shopper journey, and we recruited 8 customers that logged every single step of their onboarding journey. So you can't really argue with that. We just collected so much data. And that's when I also realized how powerful data is in sort of bringing that change, because there were so many issues that I had seen, that I've heard from call center agents, up through the years, but we hadn't managed to quantify it. We didn't know how big the problem is. So we just couldn't get any change from that for management. And that's what I then started on as sort of the next step, we started implementing MPS and started getting measurable quantitative data to really have data to back things up. And that made it a lot easier to get the change that we needed, and the commitment from management to do do some of the really hard things and some of the radical changes that we needed to do.
So, and I'm going to deviate a little bit now, Joanna, don't get mad at me. But I was just wondering, when you were looking into this data, how was the approach? Was it a hypothesis that you guys had that you wanted to test? Or did you take a stated customer problem and test that as a hypothesis to see, like, how did you approach? How did you know which sort of issues to approach and which issues were going to create value by fixing, if you know what I'm asking?
Well, at this time, we had, of course, I had some hypotheses, because a lot of customers' complaints were sent to me. And like if there was different complaints that came into customer service, they were often sent my way. So I had some ideas of things that wasn't working the way it should, of course. But I wanted to approach this from a really, really open to anything kind of. So I didn't really have any hypothesis into this project when we started it. I just wanted to be really open to what comes up. But we wanted to start with this specific onboarding journey, because we also wanted to see how we can improve this metric of activating new customers. So that's why we also took a really broad approach. Like we did a focus group, we did mystery shoppers with shopper experience, both with us and with competitors to compare. And we also did, like I said, that new customers logged their experience. It wasn't actually customers. It was quite interesting that we had a new employee onboarding course. So I went in there, and then I recruited 8 people that were just starting the company, coming from different environments and different other jobs, like in IT, for example, or didn't know the industry. So they didn't have any kind of conception to what it should be, but it allowed me to also speak very freely with them. Since they were employees. So they weren't employees of the bank, but, from the insurance or other parts of the company. And then I could also, since they worked there, I could ask them for very specific things. So they logged every single step. And then we just went through all the data, massive amounts of data, looked at every communication they got. And then we interviewed them in focus groups and by themselves to try to find out, well, what did you expect? And what were you hoping for things to happen. Would you like more communication or less communication, or what should have happened there? But yeah, when this happened, and we really dug into each step of the journey. So it was a very sort of openness to everything that came up. But from that process, it became clear that we sort of pinned it down to the sort of 3 focus areas. That was really important for us, because there was a million things that came up, and we couldn't take on all of it, but we saw a lot of potential. And what I think that I learned at that point was also how different customers are. That was very frustrating, because it's not possible to make one journey that fits everyone, because I had 8 people in the room. They had 8 different opinions. One wanted a lot more communication. Oh no, one never wanted to talk to a person. Another one wanted everything digital. It's really hard. So to try to find something that will be good enough for everything. You have to just make some choices, because you can't please everyone. It's just not possible, but you can at least make it slightly better for everyone.
More informed choices,
work, right?
Or decisions. Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering a little bit about bringing this into the future, or the as-is situation today. How are you working with this today, Miriam? Because that data and bringing it to different departments to make informed decisions is crucial. So how do you go about doing it today?
Yeah, now we do it quite differently, because we've gotten so far now. At least personally, in 15 years, I worked so much on setting up running programs where we continuously monitor and learn and analyze things into pretty small detail. So we have a really established program now at Allente that I've been building for almost 9 years. So I think we got really far with that. I'm quite proud of it. We use a very different approach now. We have 1 million customers. Obviously, we can't go out talking to them all the time, one by one. But we measure all of our touch points that we work with in our channels. For example, customer service, our installers, and the sales, different sales channels and so forth. We have dashboards for all our agents, so they get real-time data directly to them about what customers are seeing. The team leads get aggregated for their teams, so they can work continuously with coaching. We have different analysis tools there where they can see exactly where this agent, is scoring lower than the benchmark and so forth. So we have very sort of established tools. We have a good feedback loop that we've been building also for many years. I think we've had that in place now for the last 8 years, and it's been a bit up and down. Different countries, have different levels of closing the loop, but it's something that I've been fighting really hard to keep throughout all these years, is the feedback loop. Because I think that's really critical, both from sort of rescuing customers from a poor experience and trying to resolve things, because we're just never going to be at a place with 1 million customers that will get everything right all the time. That is just not achievable. But we have actually seen that we can measure almost a 50% churn reduction when we do feedback calls. And that's some pretty incredible results. We haven't had any kind of mitigating action to prevent churn that is even close to those kind of results. And that's why I keep it on, even though there's a cost of doing outbound calls. But it also gives us, that we're really close to customers. When I started working with this back in finance, we had these feedback calls as more of a company effort. So we distributed that to the whole organization to also drive engagement, being close to customers. That was from a slightly different approach. What I've fought quite hard for where I am now is that we have dedicated teams and agents that is trained to do really good feedback calls. And I find that the other one is good for driving engagement. It's not so good for the customer. So if you want to get really good results, I definitely recommend that. Even though there's a lot of other good automated digital process today, I think nothing beats human.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the same. Like, being data-driven sometimes involves the risk of losing sort of human touch. But here it sounds like you found the perfect combination of being data-driven and using that with a human touch to actually create value for both the business and the customer. And that's really what we're talking about all the time, right? That's where we want to be. So I'm impressed. And I'm just thinking, like, I would want to be part of that project, like all of your projects, basically.
Yeah.
maybe having if you guys out there listening thinks this sounds interesting, keep an eye out for Allente on LinkedIn and everywhere else, because this seems like a really, really fun place to work if you're excited about the customers.
Yeah, we do a lot, and we have all the transactional measurements, but we also still do the long relational surveys, and that we analyze that a lot. So we spent also a lot of time linking these KPIs into other important critical company KPIs, like churn, for example, and the revenue or lifetime, or how active customers are. So we always. And I think that's really critical for everyone to do if you want to keep these kind of programs, because they're quite expensive. They're expensive to run, expensive to set up, takes some resources. But I think the benefit, far outweighs the cost of implementing it. But although it does take quite a long time to get it working smoothly, and learning how to measure the right things, you have to be able to capture exactly the right drivers, keep everything dynamic and alive. So whenever you do changes in the organization, you have to adjust your program to it. I see a lot of programs being very static out there. They do the same thing over and over, year after year. And I think it's important to keep things alive and keep it moving with the organization, and just make sure you also drill deep enough so you really get to the root cause of things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering, because it seems, and I don't want to be rude to anyone who's been on the podcast before or listening to it, but it seems we're now talking to somebody who is at a quite mature level of operationalizing to the customer program, using it, initiating really good stuff. So I just want to pick your brain on, what's capturing your attention these days when it comes to customer experience? How do we do things? Like, what is it that's sort of occupying your mind then, being at this maturity level within CX? What is it that you go around, think about, worry about, are excited about, choose your preferred approach?
Well, for me, it's definitely advances in technology. I'm also always looking for ways, even though it's mature, right now, but we have to keep track on what's going on. We always look for how can we make it even better, more relevant. How can we get even more attention in the organization? That there's constantly things we need to work on and improve with the limited resources we have, obviously. But now I think there's so much possibilities with AI. So obviously I have to bring that up, as I'm sure is a topic that you also talk about a lot. But I think there's so much opportunities now in not just, at least for people like me working with a lot with surveys, I think there's tons of opportunities now that far outreaches surveys that is really important for everybody to start looking into if you haven't already. One of the things I talked about in the Qualities Conference is should you start killing your surveys? Look for other options, because we do see survey fatigue a lot and increasingly, and that's a reality that everybody who works with these kind of programs needs to be aware of. We will see, like the old customers, you have to also keep control of who is responding to your survey. Does it reflect your customer base? Because if you look at average age, you'll probably find that the older they are, the more they have time and attention span to sit and go through a long survey. Young customers, they are not interested. And we're definitely seeing a shift there. We see younger customers much more prone to rating sites like Trustpilot, for example, or app stores, or we've seen that trend for a long time, but I think it's definitely ramping up. And I think that's a result of a world where we're seeing so much fraud and fake and, things popping up everywhere. People are getting increasingly suspicious and losing trust in companies, even at a higher rate than before. So if you can think yourself, if you get advertising for a nice dress on Facebook from a company that you never heard about, what do you do? You like the dress, but who is this company? You'll go to Trustpilot and Google it. Everybody does that now. So this, I think, is going to be really important for companies as ours, and especially us, because we had a merger 4 years ago. We had a very established brands with Viasat and Canal Digital before. We don't have that luxury anymore. Now we're relatively unknown compared to the old brands. So we have to take it very seriously. The customers don't know who we are, and they will check our Trustpilot scores. And we're not happy about where the Trustpilot scores is. And if you don't work actively with these kind of review sites, you'll only get the complainers. You'll get the angry ones, the ones that feel that are emotionally triggered, usually in a negative way. So if you don't take care of these channels, they will Do you know favors? And I think there also AI is very interesting from a purchase perspective. I think more and more people are asking AI, I do it myself. Can you compare this company with this company? I'm looking into this technology. What would you say is the difference between this technology and that technology? And to try to understand which one should I go for. And I think it's coming more and more of that as well when they're comparing companies that are offering pretty similar services.
Yeah.
I operate in a very competitive landscape when it comes to TV and streaming services. The products are really, really similar, and it's hard to compare. So it's very quick to ask ChatGPT, which one's the best one for me? And then you need to think about how do we look for AI? How do we present ourselves? That is a big challenge.
So I have two questions to that. First of all, I want to ask you if you thank your AI when you're asking it for help. Do you say thank you afterward?
Now I ask, what's your source?
Because
where do you get your information?
From a previous discussion, we were talking about how we don't want, the AI monster that's just a robot taking over the world, right? If we want it to be sort of human, we need to also treat it the way we want to be treated. So we're just talking about, do we say thank you for your help when they provide us with help? So it was just side question. But what I really wanted to ask was, because this is so interesting, you've changed the brand, like you've gotten a new name, you're not that known anymore. And you still talk about 1 million customers. So what is the key driver then? Because in such a competitive world where I suspect the market is probably very, very penetrated, right?
Yeah, completely saturated.
How do you stand out, not just to AI, but to the humans as well?
Yeah, that is really hard. And I think we work in an industry where we traditionally have used a lot of push sales, lots of telemarketing, where we all, call each other and steal customers from each other. And then we have heavy anti-churn, win back teams. That is just sort of how the whole business operates. But it's definitely not going to be sustainable in the future. But what I think we can do is try to find other ways to stand out and build brands. And of course, we have to take care of the customers that we have. When we have 1 million customers in our base, I think the best thing we can do is to take care of the ones that we have rather than chasing new ones. Of course, we need to fill up on new ones too. But if you take really good care of the customers that you do have, they will advocate for you. That is sort of the whole foundation of CX, I would say, generating positive word of mouth. And then the opposite will also be true. If you make really hard business rules the customers don't like, they're going to complain about you. And when they don't like you, it's so much easier to punish you hard today than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
All these public review sites, and these are things we really need to pick up on.
I'm sure, Joanna, you remember this quote, I'm going to blow up the internet, when you get pissed off at, whatever service or product that you didn't, that wasn't as expected.
Miriam, it's I love thank you so much for what you were sharing with us today. It is exactly as Merete said, it's so easy to hear the maturity within the way that you are approaching and working with customer experience. You're using and adopting voice of the customer in a structured manner. You're using customer journey mapping. Are you still using customer? This was one of the things I was And absolutely. Do you integrate voice of the customer into the customer journey map?
Yes, well, we do it from sort of different approaches. We measure the journey steps. So we have that as a part of the Voice of the Customer program. I don't think we have absolutely covered everything, but at least the most critical journeys are covered so we can continuously monitor. We have also visualized a lot of the journeys sort of in our customer feedback management platform, so we can see if some of the touch points are declining. We can try to find out where in the journey things are not working out, and we can also analyze what are sort of the key areas, getting those being able to monitor the journey with quantitative data has been really powerful to understand what are the critical steps in the journey, because then we can do regression analysis and figure out what's the critical step, more than just hearing it in anecdotes, but more on a larger scale. And also keep monitoring, even when we're not working actively. For example, with the onboarding, we can continuously monitor and see if anything's slipping when we're not working with it all the time, because we have so many journeys and we have limited resources as everyone has. So we can only work with a few journeys at a time. and we're always understaffed in this area. We have really good journey managers. You know, one of them, Merete, they are very sought after in the company.
Yeah.
Absolutely, really good resources, and we would like to use it in all of our projects, but we're not always able to do that. But we try it at least and every time we're setting up a new process, that we map out the journey and be really clear about how we want customers to experience.
So it's become a kind of methodology that has been learned and used throughout the organization.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to one of the questions that we've asked, and this is because you and me both spoke about this previously, Miriam, and that is again back to what's capturing your attention these days in the universe of customer experience, because we see that the opportunities are vast, and you said, technology is capturing your attention, but what's capturing your attention when it comes to adopting these technologies? How far do you think we've come?
Yeah, interesting question. It was quite interesting when I went to this AI conference from Qualtrics earlier, last year. I think the conference was really good, and I think there was some really good presentations from Qualtrics, really good advances. They're doing a lot of good work in their platform, and there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. We're, of course, first in line to start using some of these new features and technologies. And we've just been through a process of all the, boring stuff with the GDPR and security and all of that. So we look forward to digging into that now. What we have been looking into so far is sentiment analysis and, started working with NLP, LLMs, those type of things, where we're starting to look more and more into data, for example, from chatbot, voice bot, voice to text from customer service. So that's definitely exciting areas where we can get so much more data than we have ever been able to before. So that's something that I'm excited about working a lot more with in the future. I think what you're referring to, as I mentioned in my talk with you earlier, is that what I kind of feel is a little bit of gap is that it's really sort of like cutting edge cool stuff that they are presenting from the vendor side. However, when I look at the presentations from the companies, I feel at least the old established companies, things are still sort of same old that it was 15 years ago. It hasn't really progressed that much. And I think that a lot of companies are not really utilizing all these new opportunities. Still relying on a lot of very traditional things. So I feel that at least in the CX space of capturing customer insights, there's a lot of potential in utilizing the new opportunities in technology. I do think that a lot of the sort of technological advances will come more from the new, fresh startups that doesn't have to change so much what they're doing, but they're starting from scratch and seeing things differently. It's, at least for me, like when I sign up for new small like companies that are startups, the customer experience is on a whole other level, because you kind of think it through from start to end, from a customer perspective, where you don't have all this legacy that you have to change. And that is a bit of the challenge for us. As you mentioned before, we changed our brand, and that is it's quite challenging. Yes, it's a new brand, but we have tons of legacy. We have 30 years of history, and customers have been with us for 20, 30 years. So we still, even though the brand sounds new, it's not really. We still have lots of old stuff we're dragging with us, and a lot of old mindset that is really difficult to change. A lot of ideas on how things should be that is a bit outdated and not so customer friendly. And I do feel like we work a lot at Allente with the customer insight management too. They are very eager to listen and to understand and take action, put together task forces to really dig into things and solve problems. But some things are really hard to change.
We like things the way they were before better, right? As humans, it's
a lot of these like these kind of like telco mechanisms of the things that customers hate, like binding periods and cancellation times, and you have to cancel 3 months before. I think customers in 1 to 2 year of binding, and then you have only 14 days to regret. If you didn't understand what you bought, you can't get out before it's 2 years.
And then you cannot measure churn. You can't really look at churn to see if your customers are loyal, because they're not actually allowed to churn. But I was thinking it's a good example. It's really, really sad. Not too long ago that the news was out that Nice Mobile, so this is a sub-brand to ICE, now being Lyse because they were bought up. they established a sub-brand, and it was just a fully digital sort of mobile subscription service that you could, it was the eSIM, it was the app, you did all the self-service with the chatbot, and, there wasn't basically any customer service. So fully digital, and then they had to shut it down for various reasons. But the main reason was that the people developing their app, they were shutting down. So it was sort of like a consequence of something else. But what I'm trying to say is, I think when big companies, and I'm surprised that not more big companies do this. If you want to stay competitive in an industry where things are moving fast, but you're sort of like the old brand, the old big safe, do a sub brand and try and fail from there, because it seems so much easier. Then you don't have the association to, and you don't have the legacy. So yeah, it may be, like you say, it's with the Voice of Customer program as well. It costs, it has a cost, and it's expensive to set it up. But if it flies, and then you can take advantage of all the old experience that you have and all the things that we really like to stay the way things have always stayed, but you can add new stuff. So I don't know. My mind was just going a bit.
No, I definitely agree with that. And then, that can be hard sometimes, but also just like hire a bunch of young people and then give them a mandate to actually do things. I think that the problem is like, if you want to take all the decisions, on top level from old men in suits that report to the board, the risk, the willingness to take a risk and do something new.
Yeah. We can probably dive into a rabbit hole on this, but I'm gonna
definitely
let us into we're not too far away from approaching the end of the recording as well. But I do want to, hopefully we'll have time for 2 more questions, and one of them is, we may have touched a little bit on it, but I still want to pick your brain a little bit more. So, considering what's going on right now, and we've talked about AI, and obviously you work a lot with it, and you've explored a lot of the services that we're going to be meeting on a day-to-day basis in the future. But what do you think is like the next major evolution? Maybe within AI, I'm not going to plant the answer for you, but like, what is the next sort of big thing that's going to revolutionize CX, do you think, from your perspective, obviously?
Yeah, well, it's hard not to say AI, obviously, because this is just going to change everything in just radical ways that it's hard to predict right now because it's advancing so extremely quick. So definitely a lot of opportunities will come from AI. And I think it's about that kind of tailoring experiences to more individual need, being able to anticipate customers' need maybe before you even know it yourself. That kind of like hyper-personalization, I think we're going to see more of. Maybe not first from the big legacy companies, but I think there's going to be a lot of exciting things happening out there on the scene, especially sort of globally. And maybe more sort of ones preventing issues, being more in the forefront, predicting customer behavior, I think is going to be key for all companies to manage. We work a lot on that too, building prediction models and how we can predict what's going to happen before they happen. So you can... it's a lot easier to try to prevent churn than to persuade customers when they are in the cancellation process, for example. So I think that's going to be really key. More prevention than sort of resolution.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a major shift, and also working more with real-time data and analysis. Yeah, more of these kind of like tailored experiences. But I think it was really key, and what I'm sort of passionate about, what you mentioned before, is this like, how do you balance the digital interactions? Because we're just going to see more and more of that. We're going to talk more and more with robots, chatbots. You're going to be talking to some kind of call center agent, chatting with some agent who sits in India, and everything is translated real time on the chat, if we're even talking to a person. But I think with the advance of AI now, I think that can become increasingly more personalized and humanized. And we've seen a lot of cool demonstrations of how AI can look a lot more human. And I still think we have to keep some of the human interaction. I think there's going to be sort of an increasing feel of luxury of being able to talk to real people.
Yes.
But I think with the support of AI, so when you can, with some efficiency, reduce all this contact to customer service, for example, you can automate all the simple things where you just need a password, or you just need this and this instruction, or solve this simple thing. And then maybe you can invest a little bit more in those interactions that really take more complex problem solving, and put your human efforts into that. And I think that's going to be vital for for the experience, because I do think that, putting some empathy into things is going to be really important. Customers really want to feel seen and understood. And I do feel that we're seeing kind of like an emotional revolution in the world. I think that's also a just as important trend that has nothing to do with technology. We've never seen as much talk on feelings, how we feel, how we are, people sharing very openly and being vulnerable and candid. Harvard is doing tons of research on feelings and emotions and specific feelings, and that's quite new in the world. And that is also something that the companies can tap more into. And I think if companies would dare to be a bit more vulnerable and human and imperfect, I think we would all benefit from that.
This needs to be the last famous words, Joanna. I'm not sure what you're going to say, but let's keep it on this string. Wow. I am so happy to realize that every single guest that we talk about is about this, in different ways. And this has been amazing. It's blown my mind completely, Miriam. And I mean, I knew you were good at what you do, but it's been a while. And it just, it's just a great reminder of how many people who are out there like yourself and working for the world to be a better place through customer experience. I know it's a cliche and I know some people are going to be laughing, but I think there's something to it. And I think, the concern around being vulnerable and the world we live in, I mean, let's not get me started on the US at the moment, right? So thank you for pointing that out. Joanna, I saw you wanted to say something. I'm going to allow a few words before we need to wrap it up.
I had the same thoughts as yourself, Merete. I absolutely love the way that you've taken us on a journey, Miriam, through being very, what should I say, very factual, very insights driven, to also reminding us about the human interaction and the values of feelings and emotions and how they play in creating a truly customer-centric organization. And I really hope that your final words as to being vulnerable and daring to connect with emotions resonates and rings through to people, our listeners who are listening today. Thank you so much for sharing openly and honestly with us today.
My pleasure. It was really nice to come here and talk about my favorite subject.
We're grateful to have had you on the pod. So this is the CX Pod. You've been listening to it, and maybe you've even been watching it. From all three of us to all of you out there, thank you, and see you again next time.
Thank you for listening to the CX Pod. If you want to reach us, you can always find us on LinkedIn, and please remember to follow us on Spotify and leave a review of what you think.